So what it does is if the boiler runs out of water, it will trigger a switch that will turn on a pump to fill the boiler back up. Well, if that switch fails and the pump never comes on, there's a secondary switch that if that trips off, it shuts the boiler off. And you can't turn the boiler on until someone fills it back up with water. And the reason for that is if you ran the boiler out of water, now you've got flame going into this giant iron thing that has no water in it and anywhere for the heat to go, and then it turns into this giant
pressure cooker bomb
essentially. And the worst case could be is that if someone comes in and says, oh my God, the boiler's got no water in it, and they open up the water valve and they fast fill it. There's an incident that actually happened in North Jersey. This is years ago before we were even in the industry where that happened. The boiler was down on low water. It was at an oil refinery. The operator turned the boiler fast fill on, and it shot the boiler across the turnpike, across 7 lanes of traffic outside of the building.
Welcome back to the Brew Dat Podcast. I'm your host, Richie Tevlin, joined by Michael and Matt Loughman. I fucked it up already. From Wasak Water.
Yep.
So welcome. We're going to talk about everyone's favorite topic today, water. I know doesn't seem very exciting, but this is beer, and beer, at a minimum is 90% water. So I think that in the grand scheme of things, water is probably the most important thing that we're dealing with in beer. So today we get to learn all about what you guys do at Wasak and how you guys are helping make beer.
Yeah, I mean, water is the most valuable resource in the world. It's often overlooked. I mean, there's water in every aspect of your life, every day. Everything that you own is transported across water. Everything that you do is made using water. You don't realize how much water is in your life until you don't have it or it becomes a problem. And that's typical of our customer base, is that people don't even know what we do until they need us. And what we do at Wasak is we prevent mechanical systems that transfer heat from one system to another from scaling or degrading. So what I mean by that is if you ever get the white dusty stuff that's on your shower head or your kitchen faucet or your glass turns foggy, it's called scale. Scale is made up of minerals. It's in all the water that we drink. In mechanical systems, what happens is that scale, that mineral deposits out on the heat transfer surfaces, and then it reduces the efficiency of a unit and makes it cost more to run it and to operate. So in like for breweries, they use steam boilers. If every time they run their boiler, it costs a little bit more, then that number becomes very large, and the boiler starts to have to run harder and longer in order to make the steam, and that results in a fuel cost. Or the boiler could be degrading, meaning that the metallurgy inside of it is rotting away, and then the boiler fails. Both of which, scaling or degrading, can cause the boiler to fail, which costs a lot of money. And usually we get the phone call once something's broken. And what we try to do at Wasak is to prevent things from breaking. We try to be an extension of the on-site operation through our chemistry and our service visits to ensure that the mechanical systems in a brewery or any of our other customers' mechanical systems last for the entire length that they're supposed to with the same efficiency that they were built with. And that's what we do with at Wasak. And we do it not only for boilers, for breweries, but we have apartment buildings, office complexes, all sorts of manufacturing, college campuses, you name it. Everything from like a little church or school all the way up to some of the largest universities in the state of New Jersey. I mean, that's what we service, but every university has that. I mean, there's water treatment everywhere, and no one really knows about it, and like I said, until they need it.
Yeah, you don't want to think about it until there's an emergency, and now you're looking at like $10,000 bill or something like that.
And that's a small bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we do here at Wasak. Wasak was founded in 1992 by Daryl Regal. Wasak stands for Whitney and Sam and Corey. Those are his 3 daughters. He ran the business for a very long time. He's still an owner in the business, and he's retiring next year. He is handing the business over, and we're kind of taking it into the next generation right now. We've been expanding greatly. And one of those expansions that we've taken advantage of in the last few years has been breweries. In New Jersey, they've been very popular. A lot of breweries have been popping up all over the place. And a lot of that has to do with the regulations and just the culture, I think. But breweries are a lot of fun as customers because it's something different. And Matt and I both very much like beer. We got that from our father. He loves beer. And it's a cool thing that we get to go to places that we would want to go anyway, and we get to get paid to go there.
Yeah, I mean, hospitals and churches and schools are, very exciting. The necessary things, but I imagine going to breweries just a little bit.
The breweries are the fun ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a little bit more fun, and
head home with some merchandise.
Yeah, you can go home and say, oh, I was at this office building, or I was at this apartment complex, or whatever. But you can go and then tell your buddies, like, oh, I went to this brewery, and I'm in the back of the brewery.
And actually fixed it, like they were broken, and like
you're welcome
for getting beer.
I know the owner. I know the owner of the brewery. I had a beer with him back where they make the beer. It was it's cool. It's one of the highlights of this job is that we get to go to cool, unique places.
Cool. So you guys personally, you guys are brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How did you now become a part of Wasak, and then how did you're now the COO, like, and now you guys are kind of taking the next generation? Like, can you give your guys' personal stories about how you guys came in?
Yeah. So after college, I reconnected with some high school people, and one of the friends' fathers owned a water treatment company, and I was working for him part time. And then a few years later, he came to me and said, "Hey, Mike, I'm going to retire at some point. Would you like to come and try this for a few years? And if you like it, then maybe we enter into some sort of sweat equity deal or something to see where it goes." And I was young at the time and was kind of climbing this corporate ladder for a big shipping company and working with water, but shipping containers overseas. That's what Matt and I went to college. We went to
external water. Now you're doing
water. Matt and I actually went to Massachusetts Maritime Academy.
Okay.
And Matt's a licensed engineer, can operate any size ship in the world. And then fast forward, I started working for Wasak, liked it, went into the ownership equity deal. And then Matt's wife, who also went to Mass Maritime and worked on water, she was looking for a part-time job because she became a stay-at-home mom. So she started working for Wasak, and then a few years later, I was looking for another employee. She posted a job ad, and Matt was at home saying, I need to find a new job. He was working in the shipping industry, explained to his wife, this is the job I'm looking for, and she goes, well, you should call your brother because that's the job posting I just put online for him.
I took a different path than him. Yeah, I like you said, I went marine engineering at Massachusetts Maritime Academy, and graduating from school, I went and I worked deep sea on a bunch of container ships, and then I worked in the oil and gas fields down in the Gulf of Mexico, and then I didn't want to ship out anymore because I was having my first kid.
Yeah. With
Katja, and at that point, I got a Lance.
Wife.
Katja is my wife.
Okay. Clarify that.
Yes, and our office boss, and
your home boss.
What was that?
And your home boss.
And the home boss, yeah. And I then went and I worked for a shipping company landside as a port engineer. I managed 3 650-foot ro-ro ships, which are basically giant floating parking garages, and they were transiting all over the U.S. and overseas, and then that was a great job. I learned a lot there, but I looked at the upward momentum in that company or movement in that company, and it did not seem like something I was interested in doing.
Yeah.
And he was, like you said, he was hiring, looking for the right person, and my first ship out of school was a 60-year-old steamship, so it was not that much of a leap for me to come and do water treatment because I already knew about it. So
I mean,
is there
a lot of, you're a marine engineer, like how much is it water, fluid dynamics and fluid engineering is kind of like all the same things?
I took classes on, in my training, I took classes on fluid dynamics
Yeah, as a
and
marine
all of that.
engineer, you have to, if you're out at sea and anything breaks, you have to fix it.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
have
With
every-
what you have on
everything
on
that you
site.
have at home, they have on a ship. So if the dishwasher breaks on a ship, there's no appliance repairman that's going to just show up on Tuesday. It's you fixing it.
Yeah,
right?
it's like Apollo 13 out there.
Yeah. So
I wouldn't go that far, but it's it's similar.
So when Matt said he wanted to come on and join, I said, you know what, Matt, it's you got to pave your own way, and it's been great.
It has been great. Yeah.
You know, Matt's really good from a mechanical standpoint because he knows how all of these things work. He can take the boiler apart and put it back together. At Wasak, we got other guys that could barely use a pair of channel locks, like a wrench, when they first started, but they were savants at chemistry. And that's what kind of makes us unique, is that we have a lot of different employees that all have unique skill sets.
But they're all good at something. So I imagine
Yeah,
coming
exactly.
together, everyone's good at something. and-
Exactly.
Yes, and we all work as a team and help each other out, and we can pretty much solve any problem at this point.
Yeah.
So before we get into anything else, could you give a brief overview? Like, how does the steam, general ideas, concepts, how does the steam system work in a brewery?
General-
Pressurized steam, just heat it up
Yeah.
and you're pushing steam through the system? Is there anything?
So you have a boiler
Okay.
and
Go through the
fire
steam cycle.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go through the steam cycle. As cadets at Mass Maritime Academy, you had to memorize the steam cycle on the training ship, which was an old steamship. We're not doing that here tonight. But simply put, fire goes in one side of the boiler, water's on the outside of that fire. That water gets heated up, turned into steam. Steam goes out, goes to usually to a hot liquor tank for just wash down water or
Yeah.
tank washing water, and one or two kettles. I have one customer with a calandria, which is just a basic heat exchanger,
Yep.
shell and tube heat exchanger, and it transfers energy, transfers heat to
that
the
steam,
product.
That steam, once it hits the metal jacket of whatever it's heating, it transfers that BTU energy into the metal, which then transfers it into the other liquid. And then once that steam condenses, it turns back into water, goes into generally a receiver tank, or it's gravity fed back towards the boiler room, or it's pumped. If it goes to a receiver tank, it's pumped back to the boiler room, where it goes into what's called a feed water tank. And that feed water tank is filled with the condensate, right, the condensed water from the steam, or from city water. So like if you have a softener beforehand, but it's filling up with fresh water, and then that, when the boiler makes steam, the water level in the boiler goes down. And when the water level goes down, it triggers a switch that turns on a pump underneath the feed water tank and pumps new water into the boiler. And that's the steam
Or
cycle.
recycled, yeah.
And it just
Yeah.
goes around and round.
I mean, it's just steam is the most, I guess, efficient way to heat things up in the brewery, and
Yeah, you're
brewery's all
transferring
about-
energy from
Yeah,
one
water
medium to another.
carries the heat, carries heat the best
Yeah.
of these mediums that are easily available to breweries or to anybody that's trying to transfer heat. And water is it's also the universal solvent, which is why it becomes a problem, because water wants to dissolve everything, and that's where we come into play.
So you guys have these closed systems, so-called closed. They're keeping everything, they're cycling everything. So a brewery owner comes in, they buy a steam system because they want to be efficient, they want to save money, but now they don't have to think about it, right? Because it's just recycling upon itself, and
Everyone,
nothing goes wrong.
yeah, everyone goes into a set it and forget it kind of mentality. And I guess this is a pretty good segue to what we talked about before. Is we get called into a lot of breweries too late. We get called into a lot of facilities in general too late, where they didn't know that they needed to do anything. They turn the boiler on in the morning, they go, they make their beer, they turn the boiler off in the afternoon.
The giant black box, and it's like they don't understand it.
Yeah,
It works.
maybe
That makes hot.
Maybe
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
explained to them that they every once in a while have to blow down the safety, or they have to blow down the bottom of the boiler. But no one ever really. Most of the breweries that we go to, people don't know how their boiler works. They don't know how to operate it. They don't even know that. In a lot of cases, they need a license. They have to have annual state inspections in New Jersey, either by the state or by an insurance company. And it's a very costly piece of equipment, not only to maintain, but to replace. And a lot of times we find that customers like breweries, they don't plan for that. They don't plan for oh, hey, we need to spend so much money every year in preventative maintenance so that we don't end up with a failed system.
Because if it doesn't work, I mean, you can't do anything.
You can't do anything. Yeah, we were recently at a brewery that opened a brand new facility. I won't mention any names, but beautiful, beautiful facility in New Jersey. And they just opened up. We have a contract with them, so they did the right thing, right? But talking to the owner, I was looking out over his beautiful brand new brew house, and I said, I got a question. You put this whole system in. This is beautiful. It's state of the art. It is probably $500,000 system that he spent money on. I go, what happens if you lose the boiler and you can't run your production for the week? And this place, they run multiple batches every day, 7 days a week. And he just says, it's $100,000. Now, I don't know if that was $100,000 profit, if it was $100,000 expenses, just $100,000 revenue. I don't know what that number is, but it was a 6-figure number. So I run a business. If someone said to me, you can't go to work for the week and it's $100,000 out of pocket, well, maybe I'd buy a little insurance, right? And so our average cost for a brewery is somewhere in the $2,000 range if we average it out across all the customers, you know.
And brewery insurance is normally 1 to 2% of total revenue. So if they're losing $100,000 in 1 week?
Yeah.
They're making what was that, $5.2 million a year?
Yeah.
So they're not, for $2,000, you're just going to make sure that you can heat things up.
Yeah,
it seems like a great deal.
and really, we become an extension of their staff, where we go in and we're using chemistry, and we can talk a little bit about that later. But we're kind of doing a once over of this, the heart of the brewing process, right? This is the heart. This is what's pumping the blood, the steam through the facility to make everything work, and we're doing a once over of it. We're going to look to see if anything's leaking. We're looking to make sure that it's operating right. We're testing, and we can actually kind of predict the future. We can say, hey, something's not right here. You've got a mechanical failure, or something's not going too well, and you need to do something proactive. Otherwise, it's going to be catastrophic, and then I'm going to have to say, I told you so.
And how are you guys doing that? You guys are just walking the line, checking the whole system, seeing what temperatures are like, pressures are like through the system, seeing
where it's just experience it. That you do this long enough, and you've worked with enough systems, you can, and you do the chemistry and the testing, and you're looking at it and you're evaluating. You're saying, well, this number is off. What's causing that? Something up the line or down the line from here is causing an issue. And
how often are you guys testing that? Is that once a quarter, or like they're continuously testing it and then you're getting
smaller breweries are typically quarterly, because we can kind of set it up, get it dialed in, and we don't need to be there all the time unless something wacky happens. A lot of the larger size breweries, we're there monthly, and we're checking. We're dialing it in.
Yeah, like when you're in like the 10 to 15 barrels, usually it's about
Industrial Arts. I'm there every single month. Yeah, that's a big brewery.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. The 10 to 15 barrel systems. 15 is kind of on the border of every quarter. It might be every other month. 10 barrel systems is usually once a quarter, and then below that is the same. We try to keep it at a minimum of once a quarter, and when we go, we're pulling water samples from the boiler, from the different tanks that are around the facility, either condensate or feed water. We're testing the water coming into the building.
We're testing the water softener.
If they have a water softener.
And you need a water softener. Why? Because the soft water doesn't erode with the salt?
Because here's a perfect example. Okay, we'll use this example here. These are large chunks of scale right here.
And what is scale? It's calcium carbonate, right?
It's calcium, magnesium,
chunks of minerals. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so these are chunks of minerals. These are minerals that have come out of the water that you drink out of your faucet, and
nice.
they consolidate as the water steams off, right?
Yeah.
And it leaves the minerals behind. So steam, in theory, is just pure H2O. Well, not in theory, it is pure H2O, but sometimes you have other things, volatiles, that can come out with it. But it leaves the minerals behind. And
I mean, where did this come off of? Like, this doesn't look like scale, right?
So that came up out of a makeup water tank.
Yeah, it's out of a feed water tank.
Okay.
So these minerals just deposited out in a feed water tank, and then they collected them. It could have been that there was a chunk of iron in the middle here that these things just kind of plated out on. But if you take a look at that pipe right there,
We're talking the big pipe.
yeah, the big pipe. So,
So
this
this
is
is
actually a boiler tube.
This is
Okay.
from a fire tube boiler, which there are different
So
types
it
of boilers.
shoots fire in the middle, water on the
Yeah,
outside.
so there'll be a big pipe, usually 2 feet in diameter, something like that. And
Yeah.
It's the average size you see. And fire gets shot through that, and it goes to the other end of the boiler, and it turns around and comes through tubes of this size, and then it turns around and goes back the other way through tubes of this size. And these tubes are the heat transfer surface. So
almost
it's
like
hot,
the
hot
opposite
air
of,
in
like,
here.
calandria.
Yes, exactly. That's basically a boiler it's a big
They're just all different
yeah,
versions
it's
of
a,
the same
it's
thing.
a big heat exchanger, and they're all
Okay.
Yeah.
different shapes and sizes. But if you look on this tube here, you can see all the mineral deposits.
And what is this? Is calcium? What is
It's
this?
calcium, magnesium,
There's probably some
iron, silica, all sorts of different
And
minerals.
I guess what you guys are doing when you guys check the water systems, you guys are checking the chemistry to see because I'm assuming you guys put chemicals in the water system to
This is
that
what
are-
we're preventing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you guys are putting different chemicals in it to make sure that this doesn't, or to
try to prevent that
try
from
to prevent
happening.
it. And I guess it probably eventually everything always kind of comes, but it.
Not necessarily. We
Okay.
have boilers that we've operated for 30 years that
Wow.
have very little scale in them. We have boilers that we've taken over the chemistry. Matt actually just did one where
Yeah,
we
we'll get
used
into
what's called a chelate program, and it's a cleaning program. So we use this different kind of chemistry that attacks the scale.
Yeah.
And
Is that
helps-
acids?
It's not an acid. It's a chelate program, and I can't explain the chemistry. I'm not going to lie to you.
The
remember how I said
molecules
we've-
of the chemical are shaped. The suffix on the name of each molecule is usually dent, which stands for mouth, basically. And I think
So it's almost like an enzyme
Latin.
where, like, it
It's
fits
almost
in.
like the molecule is shaped like a mouth, and it literally latches on to a molecule of scale and pulls it away. So this piece and this piece here, this is from the main fire chamber. You can see.
I mean, that's big. I
it's
mean,
a
like-
huge chunk of scale.
Yeah, it's like what, almost half a centimeter thick of just
It's-
is this iron?
No, that's all mineral deposit.
Okay.
So this is a customer, not a brewery, not a distillery, but a food, basically a food manufacturing plant.
Yeah.
And we took over the water treatment from another company that had obviously mismanaged it, because this is what we were left with. And after 4.5 years of running a chelate program, which you have to be very careful with, because if you, as you're pulling the mineral off, you can also damage the steel. So you have to, it takes a while to do it properly. And you don't want to be the guy that ate up somebody's boiler. But after years of dosing this system, we were
Yeah.
able to get the boiler back to efficient operation, basically,
Yeah.
by removing this insulating layer of scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
It's-
you said before it's like you're spending more money to heat things up because the efficiency's not great. It also, I've worked in systems that are not taken care of, and it goes from it takes maybe 10 minutes to heat a kettle up to
To-
an hour and a half, 2 hours. But the most expensive part of brewing is labor. So you're just having somebody sit there for 2 hours
Standing
for
around.
no reason at all, other than the fact that the system is not efficient.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the
I-
case a lot. And we actually had a brewery last year, right before the holidays. They called us up, and they had an incident where they didn't really know how to properly operate their boiler all the time, and they left it on, and they had a safety. They had some valve left open onto their hot liquor tank, and it overheated their hot liquor tank and boiled everything inside of it, to the point where it shut off the safety relief valve on the hot liquor tank, and the fire department had to come. And then when they opened it up, it was all full of scale. It had mineral deposits
And
inside.
that always happens on
That was like 2
overnight
weeks before
shifts
Christmas.
On Christmas, it's the worst timing possible when that happens.
And then they were getting the scale flakes in their brew, and they couldn't filter it. They were having to filter it then. It was just a disaster. So we ended up going in and acid cleaning their hot liquor tank, and then they had to repassivate the whole thing. But they were able to get through the holiday season. In that But that was, again, another unforeseen cost in not only their downtime, right? Because they called us on a Monday. Well, we couldn't get there till Thursday because we had to order the chemistry to get it and then put it on the calendar to get there. So for 4 days, they couldn't brew. And then once we did the cleaning, then they had to passivate it. So it was really, they couldn't brew until Friday. So they lost a week of brewing.
Then also probably their yeast culture died. So they had to
Yeah,
it's like everything.
I mean, without even getting into all that, I mean, it was just a week of them being down right before the holidays.
Yeah.
You know, and then they have to play catch up. And luckily they were able to, but too often we're coming into these places. I mean, I have another one where this customer, they lost their first boiler after 18 months. No water treatment. They lost the boiler after 18 months. The guy who I'm talking about right now, if he listens to this, is going to know exactly who it is.
He probably thinks about every night also.
He then got us to come in, and they've had a very successful water treatment program since then. But then about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, we started noticing that we were getting hardness in the feed water tank. So hardness is what we say when we're talking about the minerals in the water. So usually when you have a boiler, you would install a water softener before.
And why is that? It's like you have to have a softener. Is it because water needs to stick to something, so you need to take the minerals out and give it salt just so that it can hold on to something?
So a water softener, they say it's a softener. It's an ion exchange system. So what you're doing is you're replacing a calcium ion for a magnesium ion.
Okay.
And without getting too crazy, a sodium ion, sorry. Without getting too crazy, if you consider water to be a 5-gallon bucket,
Yeah.
right? And inside that 5-gallon bucket was a whole bunch of softballs.
Yeah.
So we're talking about solubility here, right? So every time you take a softball out, we'll call that a calcium ion. You're taking a calcium ion out, which looks like a softball, and you replace it with a sodium ion. We'll call that a marble. You put the marble in, right?
Okay.
So if you take all the softballs out and you put the marbles in, you have a lot of room in that bucket, right? So when we talk about hardness and solubility, if you have a glass of water, you can have 800 parts per million of hardness, calcium, magnesium in that water before it's met its solubility limit, meaning that it will start to drop out as sand in the water. So if you ever take coffee and you put too much sugar in it, and then the sugar drops out, because you couldn't mix it up anymore because the water's saturated with the sugar. So what you're doing is you're removing the hardness ion, the calcium ion for a sodium ion, so the water's more accepting and there's less things in the water that can plate out onto the heat transfer surface.
Okay.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But then when you have soft water, it becomes more aggressive it wants to eat things up, right?
Yeah.
So there's a balance. Like you can't go too soft.
There's a balance, and it's not acidic. It just wants to absorb. Water's very selfish. It wants to absorb as many things as possible. It's like a fat kid eating cake.
That's probably a good place to shift gears to the other problem you see with boilers.
I was like chocolate flakes.
As opposed to scale deposits, you see corrosion. That's our other main battle that we're fighting. And these are basically, and we'll make another mess here on the table.
And those are iron flakes?
These are iron flakes from the inside of a Fulton steam boiler, and you can see they're thin. I mean, they're paper thin, but they break apart very easily. But that's the inside of the boiler, and this boiler went without treatment for several years before we were brought in, and Fulton boilers are a fairly common boiler that you see in breweries and distilleries, and this is not. You don't want to. You spent a lot of money on that boiler. Yeah, Fulton is a brand of boiler.
Do you guys? I'm sorry to cut you off. Do you guys install boilers?
We
boiler
do not.
systems, or you guys just do the maintenance on everything?
We don't even do the maintenance. We just do the water chemistry.
Okay.
So what we're doing is we're using a couple of different types of chemicals. Right. Everybody in the industry has the same access to all the same chemistry.
Yeah.
It's all about how you use it. So for breweries, we primarily stick with what's called a polymer program. It's a very forgiving program in terms of like you're not relying on the boiler operator as much to be diligent all the time. And the polymer kind of ties up all those minerals and keeps them from sticking to each other so that you can blow them down. And then we're adding another product called sodium sulfite, which is an oxygen scavenger. And
Because oxygen eats iron.
oxygen eats up the
destroys iron,
boilers.
yes.
And then, the worst thing for a boiler is to not run. And when your boiler is not running, it's a giant metal object full of water. So if you were to take a 5-gallon bucket and put a piece of pipe in it and fill it full of water, it would rust. And that's what happens.
Is that what the steam then just expands, so it's touching everything, and then it's just not?
No, it's just because it's a wet environment with
Okay.
metal.
Simpler than that, yeah.
And it's just wet environment with metal, and it's going to rust. So what the sodium sulfite does, it's an oxygen scavenger. It removes the oxygen from the water so that the water can't oxidize the steel. That, when you see rust, it's oxidized. It's
Yeah, I
oxidized
think
steel.
like the wine industry uses sulfites a lot.
There's
I think
a-
to
there's-
fight it,
yeah.
and there's
Yeah,
also
they
to
actually,
fight oxidation also.
Back in the
It removes
day,
the oxygen.
before there was like food and drug regulations, they used to use buckets of sodium sulfite. When the meat would turn brown at the butcher, they would dip it in the sodium sulfite, and it would suck the oxygen back into the meat to make it red again. So it would always look pink in the meat counter.
Nice.
They don't do that anymore because cancer and stuff. So, but yeah, so we use products like that to prevent scaling and corrosion within the boilers. But more importantly, we kind of handle the chemistry from our end as best that we can. More importantly, we're there to advise the staff on how to operate their boiler as well. Making sure that they're blowing the boiler down on a regular basis, and making sure that they know how to blow the boiler down.
So for larger, I imagine like the smaller breweries, like the 10-barrel systems, 15-barrel systems that you talk about, like they're probably turning on and off their boiler probably every day, maybe every week, like every weekend, maybe they shut it down.
Yeah, whenever they need to brew, unless some of them will leave them on at an idle, or if they use them for heat in the winter, they run more frequently.
But the larger breweries, would they be running the boiler 24/7 and just kind of just automatic blowdowns?
Typically, the larger breweries are on constantly.
And sometimes they'll have like an automatic surface blowdown, but the bottom blowdowns they're not allowed to be automated.
Okay.
They have to be done manually, and a lot of the reason for the blowdowns is twofold. One is because you have to blow the mud out of the bottom of the boiler. These boilers, you're introducing a lot of water. You're pulling when the condensate comes back. You have all that piping that can get corrosion in it, and that's going to bring the iron oxide back to the boiler, and you want to blow all that out. But more importantly, when you blow down a boiler, you do your bottom blowdown, which is at the very bottom of the boiler where the mud accumulates. You're blowing that out, but then you're also blowing down the 2 low water cutoffs on a steam boiler. So there's 2 safeties, and they look like they're basically like toilet bowl floats, right? So you know how a toilet
Is that
bowl
kind of
float.
every system is 2? Is that like the standard?
Yeah, there's a redundancy.
Okay.
So what it does is if the boiler runs out of water, it'll trigger a switch that will turn on a pump to fill the boiler back up. Well, if
Yeah.
that switch fails and the pump never comes on, there's a secondary switch that if that trips off, it shuts the boiler off. And you can't turn the boiler on until someone fills it back up with water. And the reason for that is if you ran the boiler out of water, now you've got flame going into this giant iron thing that has no water in it and anywhere for the heat to go, and then it turns into this giant
Pressure cooker bomb,
essentially. And the worst case could be is that if someone comes in and says, oh my God, the boiler's got no water in it, and they open up the water valve and they fast fill it, and
Just vacuum.
it'll blow the boiler up. There's an incident that actually happened in North Jersey. This is years ago before we were even in the industry, where that happened. The boiler was down on low water. It was at an oil refinery. The operator turned the boiler fast fill on, and it shot the boiler across the turnpike. It crossed 7 lanes of traffic out the side of the building.
The pressure's crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
you're only,
pressure
in
vessels are
most breweries, you're operating between 5 to 15 pounds of pressure, which is considered a low pressure boiler.
Yeah.
But I have a customer that has gotten a 3rd degree burn from a 5 pound pressure. boiler.
Yeah, I mean, steam is no joke either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and he was out of work for like 8 to 12 weeks because he had a 3rd-degree burn on his forearm from a low-pressure boiler at a school. The steam got on him, and it just, before he knew what happened, his skin was peeling off.
It's like you say, like probably like when you go in, you do sales, right? For Wasak?
Yes.
Like going into these new breweries, like you're trying to like tell them to like, you know, a lot of these people are pinching pennies and they're like, I don't have another $2,000 to spend. But like, you know, like you don't have $100,000 to give to somebody that injures themselves
Yeah.
when this thing breaks, or
Yeah.
$100,000 to replace this system when it breaks. Like I imagine a lot of this is like, you know, preventative maintenance nobody wants to do. It's boring. It costs money. It does save you money though, and I think that for a lot of people, it takes making a mistake to realize that they need to.
Yeah.
I got a
do
good
it.
story there. So I have a distillery making the mistake, right? They were making the mistake for about 2 or 3 years before they made the phone call. They were operating a Columbia boiler. This is a small distillery. Columbia boilers have a great plaque on the side of it that says, consult your local water treatment professional for water treatment, for all your water treatment needs, whatever it says.
Yeah.
But it says it right there in big bold letters on the side of the boiler. They didn't do that. They operated that boiler for 3 years and were making money. And then all of a sudden that boiler, they finally called me. I came in and I said, we can do this, but that boiler is not going to last. And we need to make some major changes around here to make sure your next boiler lasts. And lo and behold, that boiler did not last. And they ended up changing out the boiler. They were down for, you know, a month or so, or a few weeks anyway. But they're paying their guys. They're not able to produce any product. And then on top of that, you have to buy a new boiler and pay somebody to put that boiler in, and that's a massive expense, and you're not making money at the same time. Flash forward to present day. I've made some recommendations. They've put in some condensate return. They put in a sparge line, which preheats the water before it goes into the boiler, which makes the system even more efficient. And now everything is running great.
Is that what you're
Knock on
doing?
wood.
You're going through and like you're looking at the systems and being like, this is not efficient here. Like you guys are just
I love
wasting money
nothing
and
more than
energy.
going in and helping you solve the problems. That's what really makes me tick, is coming in saying, hey, you've got problems, but we can fix them together. Chemistry is a part of that problem. I'm going to do my best to take care of that, but you need to work with me because some of these problems are on your side of the operation.
Like the
For
sparge
example,
water, like they're gonna have to go in and install another
yeah,
line. to
a
them.
sparge tank. So I'll dive into that problem real quick. This is a brewery in upstate, or a distillery in upstate New York. They're running off of cold well water. They had a feed water tank, which is again the tank that pumps water into the boiler, and the makeup water. They didn't have a lot of return from the condensate. Condensate's very hot because it was just steam. So that usually warms the feed water tank. They didn't have a lot of that warming the feed water tank. So they were putting a lot of cold well water, oxygen-laden cold well water, straight into the boiler. Well, that was eating all of the oxygen scavenger, the sodium sulfite, which is one of our chemicals that we put in. It was eating it all up. I couldn't get any oxygen scavenger into the boiler. I said, you need a sparge line. A sparge line pumps steam into the feed water tank, which preheats it, drives not all, but a lot of the oxygen out, because hot water mechanically separates the oxygen in the water. But hot water will carry much less oxygen than cold water will.
So it sinks to the bottom and pushes everything then out.
Basically, it drives it out of the water.
Yeah, the hotter the water is, the less oxygen.
And then
it's
you
in
also talked about kind of almost a buffer tank where like, you know, it's not going from like straight hot to cold. It's
Yeah,
like
and
almost warm water.
Yeah,
It'll
so we
kind
got rid of the
break it in.
oxygen problem. We warmed the water before it's going in the boiler, so now it makes the boiler more efficient because it doesn't have to take water from 45 degrees well water
up to
212 or
and then the
or
operator's
higher.
not sitting there like, I'm trying to heat this up, and then all of a sudden you just
Yeah.
dip down in temperature.
And a
for
lot
no
of the-
reason at all
In
'cause you don't
fact,
understand
that's some of the feedback that I got was they can heat their kettles faster because
And a lot of the systems they're oversized, so they have all these extra BTUs that just get wasted. So if you can take a little bit of that steam that you're not using anyway, right? And put it into your feed water tank and make that water going into your boiler 180 degrees. Well, now you have to bring the water from 180 degrees to 212, and it's like that.
I think a lot of, like, even why people make these mistakes, like, they know how to make beer, but they don't understand water chemistry or engineering or heat transfer.
Steam systems
and
or anything.
it goes just beyond us even.
Yeah.
I mean, I have another brewery that they don't have a distribution vehicle. So they drive their own vehicles around, and I showed up one day, and the guy's loading a keg and 6 cases of beer in the back of his Jeep Wrangler. I'm like, dude, that's like that's 1,000 pounds. Like, you can't do that. It's like that. It's that penny wise, dollar foolish kind of mentality of like, oh, we're watching the nickels and dimes, but we don't realize that, and I got to compliment breweries. They do a phenomenal job putting money into the appearance of the brewery, into the marketing, the friendly approach, the product, the coloring on the can, the design on the can, and it's the same in every industry that we see, right? There's a lot of guys that are really good plumbers. There's not a lot of plumbers that are really good businessmen. There's a lot of guys that are really good brewers. There's not a lot of brewers that are good businessmen. And so you have to, and in our case too, right, as Wasak, we're a small business, and I have to know my limit. I don't know how to describe to you what a Keelant program is. Matt can. I have another guy, Greg, that could tell you on the board in molecular, in the formulations, he could do it. I can't do that. So what you don't know, you have to rely on other people for.
And you work at Wasak. I imagine these people that are
I'm the COO of Wasak.
Exactly. These people
and I'm the first
brewers
one to admit to say that I don't know all the chemistry the way that some of my other guys do.
Definitely.
But that's okay, because that's not my job. My job is to make sure that we have the right people in the right place.
And as brewery owners and operators, your job is not necessarily to be a boiler plant operator or a steam plant designer, that's somewhere we can step in.
How are you going to keep up with the latest TikTok trends if you're worried about your boiler?
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of,
it's a
and it's not
collaboration.
just breweries that fall into this. I mean, you could say it about distilleries, you could say it about colleges, churches, everywhere. We see it across the board where they're really good at their business, but then, they don't realize that their business is all encompassing. And rather than be smart and hire somebody or bring in a consultant or hire a third-party firm to take over the things that you don't know and to manage those properly so that you don't have to worry about them, that goes a long way. Like we recently at Wasak, we hired an IT and financial consultant because we were doing some accounting, QuickBooks, that kind of stuff. We're changing over. But he also is just universalizing our IT department, getting a Microsoft account that everybody uses, not just all individuals. And he has remote access to all of our computers. So the other day I had an IT problem. I don't know how to use a computer that well. I can do spell check on Word, but we had some internet scam where we had a real issue of maybe someone was trying to mimic us with fake invoices or someone had hacked our system. We didn't know. But I have an IT guy. I just made one phone call and said, Bill, take care of it. He took care of it the next day. It was done. And we see with these brewery owners across the board, no matter how big or small they are, that because they have to wear so many hats that they're doing the best that they can, but it's not really the answer. And sometimes you need to bring in that outside person. You need to listen to that person that's consulting with you or that you've paid to come in to, fix your system or to monitor your system. And if they make a recommendation, they're not doing it for them. They're going to go home, and at the end of the day, their house is going to be fine. It's your boiler that's going to break. It's your, even like breweries that use like mini splits, right, for heating and air conditioning. You got to have those serviced. Yeah. Like those kinds of things. How many times do you hear about a brewery that's got to have a drain line snaked or something? It was an unforeseen expense. These are things that come up with breweries all the time and other businesses.
And you're talking like short-term versus long-term expenses, but it's not that Nice.
We've tried to time that.
Yeah, guess Curly Brothers. But like, if you don't take care of your boiler, like within 3 years, if you're not boiling it down, you're not taking care of anything. Within 3 years, you can fail. Like 3 years in the lifespan of a business is not a long time.
You can get away with it for a few
in
years.
a
but
brewery,
it's
you
gonna
probably
catch
haven't
up.
even paid off that initial note.
Yeah,
You're still
probably
paying
off
on
the
you're still
boiler,
paying off your
and now
Aunt
you're gonna have
Betty.
to buy another one on
Yeah.
top of the old one that you don't even have anymore.
And I get it, because a lot of brewers that you talk to, like guys that start their own beer companies, they're borrowing money from their mom, their grandma, their cousin. They've got their brother involved. They've got their best friend gave them $20,000 to start up. So they've got a lot of people they got to pay back. They're working on sweat and tears because that's all they've got left. And then you're like, oh hey, by the way, your boiler just failed and you can't make beer and it's going to cost you $80,000.
Yeah, but I think what you said before about like, they're great marketers. Like they may be like, all right, what's not working? Like I need to figure out how to make more money, and then they just spend more money on marketing. But a lot of this is like, you're losing the efficiency. If you just spend like $2,000, not that a lot of money, but then all of a sudden your efficiency changes in your brew house, and without changing anything about your business besides the fact that you just have somebody else maintain you, so you're still not thinking about it, then you are now saving all this money for labor. You're saving all this money for then,
Oh yeah. It really.
utilities.
It's a stitch in
And you're
time will save 9.
Yeah.
It's one of those situations.
Yeah,
right?
and we see it all the time. And it's not just breweries, like I said. I mean, I can tell you countless stories of the schools, the office complexes. We got into a very large college campus one time because they redid their student center. They had a brand new bookstore, new cafeteria. They spent $8 million redoing this building. They didn't redo any of the mechanical systems. The first week of school, the hot water failed, right, for the cafeteria on a Thursday. They had to bring food trucks in. The Board of Health got involved. It was on News 12, New Jersey. That Monday, they were supposed to have the board of directors for the college come and welcome everybody to the new building, right? So then on that Friday, we had to acid clean their hot water maker. They had to replace it eventually 2 weeks later. It ended up costing them like around $90,000 in 2 weeks because they didn't fix it with the $8 million capital budget that they had.
Well, it looked fancy though.
It looked really
It looked
fancy,
great.
and they paid for it. I mean, and it's the same story no matter where we go. But with the breweries specifically, I mean, with a proper water treatment plan and someone that's willing to learn and be educated on their systems, that's really, those are the customers that we really like.
And those are the customers who
Absolutely.
are successful. I think a lot of people forget that you're selling beer. You're not just selling a brand. And it's like people kind of lose sight of the basics. They're like, you need to be good, like manufacturers. You own a factory, a manufacturing plant.
That's right.
Like you're
Exactly.
producing it good. Like that is your business. You need to make sure that all that is good, and then you can make sure that you spend all this fancy money on marketing and all this other stuff.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we are there to just be part of the team and make sure that your plant is running like a top and keep it going.
Yeah, doing what it's supposed to do. And the customers that listen to us, not even listen to us. I hate to say that, but take our recommendations, read our reports of that we're giving them, and saying like, hey, it's like a doctor's checkup. Like you're giving you a physical, and we're saying, hey, your boiler's in good health, or it's not, or hey, it's in pretty good health, but it needs this extra little bit. And we're just trying to point you in the right direction so that your ship stays straight and you keep on going.
Can you read the list of clients that you have?
Do you want to read the list?
Yeah, sure. I'll read the list.
We'll read the list because the list is impressive. It's like people that are like making great beer, and everybody knows them throughout. Like not just Pennsylvania, but like the whole tri-state. Tri-state in this case, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York area.
Yeah.
So we do Ashton, Flounder, Round Table, Warwick Winery, which is not a brewery, but Tonewood, Subculture, Root Down, MudHen, Forest and Maine, Dr. Brewlittle, Five Dimes, Tall Oaks, Magnify, Taconic, Sloop, Industrial Arts, Jersey Girl, Sunken Silo, Reddington, Manafirkin, Ross, and Bellamara Distillery. And Taconic is the distillery too.
Yes, and Warwick Winery is actually technically a distillery.
Okay.
That's what we're servicing, the boiler for the distillery.
Is that in Pennsylvania?
That is in Warwick, New York. So just over the border in
We have
the
Warwick
Black Dirt
Brewery
region.
here.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey. We are in Connecticut. We don't have any breweries in Connecticut, but I say New York, but we also do Long Island and Manhattan.
Those are
There's three different states. Three different states in our book.
Yeah.
And then we have a sister company in New England that does a few breweries up that way as well.
Cool. Same thing, same type of business. Though?
Same type of business, different name. We call it our sister company because 32 years ago, when our owner Daryl started Wasak, he helped a couple of other guys get into business as well. There was a big merger and acquisition in the water.
And how did he
industry.
get in? Was he just like updating small systems and then like slowly grew it, or he jumped right into like kind of these large industrial systems?
No, he was the Northeast regional sales manager for a very large water treatment company.
Okay.
And in the 90s, there was a big merger. His company bought a bunch of other smaller companies, and his job essentially was to take all the smaller company that they bought, take all the accounts, integrate them into his salespeople, and then fire everybody else. Fire all the guys that were with that other company. And he said, "No, I'm not doing that because they can still have jobs. There's enough fruit at this whole table."
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, you won't do it? All right, there's the door." And they fired him.
Well, he's like, well, now I have a whole Rolodex of people I can hire.
So
Start this up.
he went out and because he was an executive, they give him. I guess they did this back in the 90s. They gave him a package that included a recruiter. And he went to the recruiter and it was like a certain budget amount of money that he could spend with this recruiter as part of his exit package. And he went to the recruiter and said, "I don't want a new job. I'm going to start a small business." And he had the recruiter help him start develop a business plan. And then he went to a bunch of the other guys that got laid off and said, "Hey, I'm starting a business. I have formulations. I have a distributor. I'll help you get into business. I've got insurance lined up." And so he helped these other guys that got laid off start their own businesses by sharing the formulas. And then he helped them by doing their invoicing for them and setting them up. And, because he was their boss when they all got laid off. So he kind of felt a little responsibility, but he's just such a good person that he helped them get into business. And then for the last 30 years, those guys were loyal to him, always bought their chemistry through him. And then, a couple of years, when I first started, one guy had retired, was getting ready to retire. So Daryl bought his business out and let him retire and incorporated that. And that actually kind of helped me to be hired because he had bought this business that needed to be serviced. So then I got to be hired. And we've done that for a few other guys as well. And, so, that's how Wasak came to be. And we got a sister company in New England now. And it's just, it's a cool multi-billion-dollar industry that we're in that nobody knows anything about.
There's all these fun industries, that's just like you don't even think about. I'm like, no, this is worth $1 billion.
Well, the largest water treatment company is a company called Nalco, and they were acquired, I think, in 2017 or 2018 for $4.3 billion by Ecolab, and no one knows about it. And Ecolab is a company.
I didn't realize Ecolab was that big, and they bought this company.
Ecolab is
huge.
Ecolab is a 48,000 employee company.
I had no idea.
And I'm told by
global entity.
I'm told that Ecolab's one of their primary shareholders is Bill Gates.
There you go.
Wow. All right.
Don't want to say that too loud into the ether, but yeah. So, there's big companies, and then there's companies like Wasak, and then there's even smaller companies that are just like one guy that is a water consultant, and he's got a product
just walking
line
around
and,
checking out steam systems, and like you can be more efficient here and there.
Yeah, I mean we do cooling as well. So anywhere there's heat transferred through water, we're there. So we have cooling towers, steam boilers, process systems. I mean, we have one customer that they grow crystals. They grow crystals inside these little kilns, like a kiln for making pottery, and it's no wider across than this table. The outside is cool to the touch. The exact core of that kiln is 2,200 degrees centigrade, and they use water to cool it.
It's really hot.
That's really hot. That's the sun.
What are they making diamonds? Like what is
They are
this?
growing these carbon-based crystals. They cut them into wafers, and then they sell them for electrical components for defense contractors.
Again, one of these industries that like
They're
probably
the
worth
You
third-
didn't even know about.
They're the
yeah.
third
Yeah.
largest consumer of electricity in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah. We have a
That's
very cool
insane.
job.
Yeah, and it's we have all. We had a customer one time that made all the shopping bags for Macy's, and so you'd go into there and they blow mold shopping bags, but you'd see all the conveyor belts full of the Macy's logo with the star on it.
Yeah.
And it was the coolest thing at Christmas time because you felt like you were like an elf in his workshop, right?
What is that?
Maybe you did.
We have customers that make garbage bags. We got customers that make. We had a customer that made Iron Chef Szechuan sauce. That's what they made. Like it's like such a weird thing, but that's we have customers that do all
Down
sorts.
there angle.
Baggage tags for airplanes. I have a customer that specializes in that, and they do it for like all of the major airlines.
Hey, everything
and
you
it's
have,
in New Jersey.
somebody's got to
You
make
wouldn't
it
know.
somewhere. So
Yeah,
That's right. It's
Yeah.
a very cool job. We touch a lot of different industries.
yeah,
Breweries is just one of them. It happens to be one that we really, really like.
yeah,
For
yeah,
you.
and it's cool because you get to see everybody's take on a brewery. That's kind of one of the coolest things. Is like breweries are known for their unique facade, right? They're not facade, but their structure that they're in, right? Like they've got to have a cool building.
Yeah.
If they don't have a cool building, like you ever go to a brewery that's in like a strip complex?
they're just very boring, and it's just like even
How
like
do you
the
make it
old
unique?
industrial, and it's like what is this?
The only
Like,
one that I really thought was cool was Pinelands Brew Pub. You ever been there?
I've not.
That's down in the Pinelands, like exit 59 off the Parkway. It's one
Yeah.
It's one exit past Long Beach Island because that's where we go in the summer. And I got stuck in traffic, so I ended up going one more and saw a brewery and stopped. And it's in a little like industrial strip, but then they open up the back doors and like you're in the Pine Barrens. So it kind of that's
Pine
really,
Barrens.
Barons,
Yeah.
yeah. Whatever. We're not a 609er, so we don't know the lingo.
There you go.
But that's really cool. You get to see the different breweries and experience them.
And you guys are part of the New Jersey Brewers Guild.
Yeah, so we're an allied member with the New Jersey Brewers Guild. I view us as kind of a unique member. There's a lot of attorneys and accountants that join these associations because everybody needs an accountant, everybody
Yeah.
needs an attorney. It's a sad state of the world that we live in that everybody needs an attorney, but it's just the way it is. So us being like a quasi trade member of the Brewers Guild, we bring a different perspective than most of the other allied members to the New Jersey Brewers Guild, because the brewers and the accountants and the attorneys and the marketing people, they're not to say a dime a dozen, but they kind of are, and they're a lot of them are just there because they want a bigger client base. You're no different than the corner store or the other businesses that they have. For us, we're going into your facility. We're
Yeah.
meeting with your staff. We're touching your equipment. That's a lot different than an accountant or an attorney who you're having a Zoom call with, or you're going to their office and you're sitting down and they're saying, oh, well, your numbers are good and your production is up and this and that, or we got to make sure that we don't infringe on this trade label. We're in your operation. We're in.
Yeah, there's something different about like actually being a part of producing the good versus just
Exactly.
like this auxiliary, just like helping on a business level.
Exactly. And I've noticed that like when we talk to brewers and actually get their ear when they're not, bouncing around doing every other job they have to at their own facility,
Yeah.
they're really engaged with us because they want to know, they want to learn. We're someone that can teach them something.
Well, it's so vital. After you keep stuff clean, it's just you're basically taking liquid and you're heating it up or cooling it down, and that's what brewing is. You're just changing the temperature of it, changing the pressures of it, and then that's how you're controlling it. And it's like for a lot of people, it's just like this giant black box, even though it's so vital to the operation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have another example of we had a brewery that they rotted out their hot liquor tank. The heat exchanger inside of it failed. And
So beyond just that's terrible and they have to replace it, and then also it's just like a health hazard. Also, all that stuff that's chipping away, like where do you think that's going? It's going in the beer.
yeah. Yeah.
Like-
and it wasn't from the steam side, because what happens is when from the carbonic cycle, and again, don't ask me to explain it, because the guy Greg that works with us, he has explained the carbonic cycle to me no less than 3 dozen times. And
It's one thing to understand it. It's another thing to be able to
explain
reiterate it and teach it.
Yeah. And so what happens is when the steam condenses, you get carbonic acid. And we are limited by what we can do because it is a food and drug regulation, right? You can only have so many, we use in steam to prevent carbonic acid, we use what's called amines, steam amine. They flash off with the steam and they prevent this carbonic acid from forming. And there's different types that travel different distances in the steam depending on how big your system is. But what happens is carbonic acid forms when the steam condenses, and then it's just water in an acidic state, and it rots out the lines that carry that condensate back to the boiler. And so you'll have a pipe that will actually have like a U shape at the bottom of it because it's deteriorating the bottom wall of the pipe as
the water runs.
Where it runs. Like it's like the Grand Canyon. It's just rotting it away.
Yeah.
It's dissolving it slowly, right? And so that's how you get the iron that comes back and plates out in your boiler. And what happened was we thought that the steam had rotted the steam jacket out on the hot liquor tank. But in fact, it was actually, they were pulling well water. And their well water, it's a stainless steel tank, right? Their well water was very low in pH, so it was acidic. And they had a lot of chlorides in their water. Chlorides are very bad for stainless. And stainless steel will rot very quickly.
Yeah,
When chlorides attach it, it'll pit it. And then you have the acidic water as well. And it rotted the hot liquor tank and the cold liquor tank from the inside out. And this brewery now has a decision to make if, they're going to stay at this facility. Do you pre-treat the well water coming in, which was going to be about $40,000 for this setup to pre-treat the water before it comes into the facility? Or do you budget for like every 4 or 5 years we have to replace the hot liquor tank? Because if you don't, now you're messing with your brew, you're messing with the boiler.
People don't realize
It's
that breweries are
all
liquid
intertwined.
factories. Like liquid coming in the water, and then also what fucks up a lot of breweries is the wastewater. Because then after they go to a certain size, now the state steps in and they're like, you need to start paying for this. You're just dumping chemicals and BODs down the drain.
Or you've got to adjust the pH.
You just pH, all these things, and it's like,
and it adds up quickly.
Yeah.
And if you don't
at the end of the
get
day,
a hold
you
of
are
it
a
and do it
liquid
right.
factory, and
Yeah.
you need to, think about that before you do anything else.
Yeah, and those are the kinds of things that really catch the breweries with their pants down because they think they're having a great year, and it's like, oh no, what are we gonna do? Right?
Yeah.
And I know that just from talking to brewery owners, that the first few years are so critical to make it or break it because, like I said before, you've got personal loans, you've got business loans.
I mean, normally first couple of years, you're not being profitable, whatever, and then now you build your sales up. Now you are doing well, but then you haven't taken care of the boiler. So 3 years in, you start
Boom.
making money, you can pay yourself, and then bam, you gotta buy another boiler, $100,000, and then you're right back to where you started.
Yeah, and our thing is that we like breweries because we believe in small businesses. We're a small business. We like to see people be successful. We don't service breweries because we make a lot of money on them. They're profitable. We make a little bit of money on them. We have other business that's way better that we go after. We service breweries because we generally like the clientele. Most people that own a brewery are really nice people.
Yeah.
There's some that are not
Absolutely.
so nice, but most of them are very nice people. They're very level-headed people to deal with. And you want to see them successful because, like I said, they're putting their blood, sweat, and tears into this, and we can associate to that because we're in a small business. So, is there stuff for work at my house? Yeah. Like, I live and breathe it every day. So I get it when the brewer's like, I slept here last night. I get that. I get that. I understand what that means. So we try to work with them, and then, you know, even work with them on a financial level. Like, we've had breweries that they've fallen behind, and so we put them on a payment plan. We'll make the bill as small as possible. If you want monthly billing, quarterly billing, biweekly billing, we'll put your credit card on file, whatever it is that you want, because we don't want to force you to have us in your facility, but we want to give you every reason. We don't want to give you any reason not to have us in your facility, because we know that it's that critical for you to be successful as a business owner.
Well, I mean, hopefully it just gets to a point where then it just becomes the standard. Like the same way that you're paying your insurance bill, you're just like standard.
And
you're paying
these,
somebody.
you know, when you are starting your small business plan for a brewery, water treatment's not a line item. It's not even a thought.
It's not even on the radar.
It's not even on the radar. What's on the radar? Oh, here's the equipment we got to purchase. Here's what my lease is going to cost. Here's what employees are going to cost for the first year, and insurance, and this and that, and marketing. There's no line item for preventive maintenance.
If you're starting a business and you're, especially a production facility where you are literally running a factory, if you don't have, even if it's not broken down by water treatment, if you don't have preventative maintenance broken in there and like being a significant cost, like you're going to get fucked up.
Yeah, no, everybody says, I'll do it myself.
No, you won't.
I'll fix the toilet myself.
Yeah, you do it yourself once, and then you're going to forget about it for the next 6 years.
Or you're not going to do it right because, you know what? You're a brewer. You're not a mechanical contractor, and you don't know how to turn a wrench.
Exactly.
Right? Like, Matt, where's that pipe nipple?
Pipe nipple right here.
So here's an example. We see this all the time, right? So this is a reducing bushing from 3/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch, right?
Yeah.
So this is a standard. You can buy these at Home Depot, Plumbing Supply House, Ace Hardware, wherever. They're made in China. We had a brewery that they installed the boiler, and they used pre-cut nipples, black pipe nipples. So like this threaded piece with just a pipe at the end of it. And all of them were off the shelf, pre-threaded from China. And every single one of them failed on the boiler in the first 18 months. The plumber then had to go on multiple different occasions, right? Because it wouldn't all fail at one time. It would, like, this one would fail, then that one would fail, then another one would fail. And so what he had to do was every single one that failed, he'd have to buy a piece of U.S.-made steel, cut it, thread it, take the boiler apart, put it in, and then start it back up. Or first drain the boiler to do that. So every time one of these would fail, it was half a day, lost production, drain the boiler, pay a guy to fix it, because they were being cheap. And they bought cheap parts, and every single one of them failed. And it cost them not even tenfold. It's 100-fold what it should have cost because they cheaped out on materials.
They cheaped out on a $1 fitting, and it cost them a day.
Yeah, because this is so thin, and we see this all the time where, Temu's a lot cheaper. It's not better. You get what you pay for, right? Yeah. And if you're this is your life stream.
Save the Temu for bottle openers. Don't save it for your pressurized steam system.
Exactly. Yeah, buy the cheap hats for a little bit, or
these are high quality hats.
Get the cheap coasters, or the cheap urinal cakes in the toilet. But
not your production material that is under stress all the time. Don't cheap out on that, because that'll just cost you money. I mean, I think if you go into like planning on building out a production facility, if you just spend a little bit more money on doing stuff, you won't. It'll be at the point where you won't realize that you saved this money because you're not gonna have that issue.
Yeah,
you just paid it up front, but.
I mean, even like if you look at this, right? So this is a standard piece of 3/4 inch copper. Yeah. Normally this would be very light, but feel how heavy that is, because that is all calcium carbonate scale.
The diameter, the inside diameter has been reduced by half.
Yeah. So you're not only you're reducing the flow, right? So imagine if that was in like any of your piping, that would reduce the flow by a lot, but. Imagine if you were trying to transfer heat through there. you just now have a huge insulation factor. And, in a boiler, right, the outside of the boiler is surrounded by fire brick. When you add all this scale, you're adding fire brick to where the heat's got to go through, and it costs so much more.
And this, correct me if I'm wrong, once you have scale, then it creates more scale faster, right?
Things tend to snowball.
Yes.
So you start developing scale on your tube,
Yeah.
and then your heat transfer goes down, and then then more heat is required to make the required amount of steam. So temperatures go up, and it just steamrolls.
Compounds on itself.
And
compounds.
it gets wider
Yeah,
and wider,
absolutely.
so like it has to.
And then eventually it goes from being a 1/16 of an inch thick to half an inch thick. And I think for chillers, it is a 1/16 of an inch is a 10% increase in price. That's for refrigeration
efficiency.
side, for efficiency.
Yeah.
For boilers, it's something like 3 to 5% for a 1/16 of an inch, but that adds up.
I mean, if
very,
your fuel
very
bill
quickly.
is $100,000 a year and it's 3 to 5%, that's
I mean, that's coming
That
straight out of your
pays
pocket
for-
without like some business decision. It's literally just like
yeah.
an issue that could have been completely prevented, and that's money in your pocket.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We're
and
making a
when
mess
That's
of the table.
well over $2,000, per year.
yeah, I mean, not to confuse industries, but from a chiller standpoint for making air conditioning, the average cost to run the average chiller in America is about $200,000 a year.
Yeah.
If you decrease the efficiency by a 10% loss, which is like roughly a 1/16 of an inch of scale, that's $20,000 more in electricity that you're going to use per year. $20,000, right? The average cost to treat that chiller system, and by the way, these are numbers taken from our association and
Yeah.
averages, right? Is $6,000. So your return on investment for your water treatment is within the first
Yeah, but
6 months.
this is the industry. That's how you're making money. It's like you could spend an extra like $12,000, whatever. What is it? $14,000 on marketing to like make up that money. But like people don't realize that like a lot of the money that you're missing out on is like your fucked up efficiencies or your bad manufacturing practices.
Yeah.
That you're just like blindly
And you know
dumping
what's-
money into.
And no one will talk about it because
Because it's
no
not
one.
sexy.
Well, it's not
It's not
sexy.
pretty,
No one admits
yeah.
their mistakes.
Yeah.
No one will say, "Oh, you were right. Oh, I should have listened to you." And we're not. No one's asking for that. We're just saying like, "Hey, we're here to tell a story about history repeats itself, and I've been doing this 11 and a half years, and I've seen history repeat itself every other
Well,
week."
steam systems have been around for what 100 years.
Yeah.
Clearly there's still issues, and
Yeah.
people are not learning. They need to figure this out.
So you want to bring it back to beer. So the first ever quasi-documented case of water treatment, back in the day when they had steam boilers, there would be big water tube boilers, and they were so big that people would go in them to clean them, right? And
like children.
no, it was the Irish,
Okay.
right? Maybe Irish children, but
Yeah.
so they would go in and they'd have to break the scale out with sledgehammers. They'd beat the scale and shovel it out because they didn't have water treatment. They would just
Yeah.
keep pumping water in, make steam, and they would have no returns. And so they'd go in every once in a while. They'd shut the boiler down, and the guys would go in and bust the scale out with sledgehammers and muck it out. Well, what they would do is they would hang a bag of potatoes in the boiler because it was hot and steamy in there, and that would be their lunch. Right? They'd cook the potatoes while they were. Well, the legend has it that, and it's in multiple water treatment books that I have.
Yeah.
The legend has it that they forgot a bag of potatoes in the boiler, and they sealed the boiler up and they ran it, and the phosphate from the potatoes made the scale softer the next time they opened it up, and that was like the first legend of water treatment, and it's in, like I said, it's in all the manuals that we have. So if there's potatoes in a boiler and it was a low-level person doing it back in the day, it had to be an Irish guy. So,
Definitely.
I mean, we kind of came full circle there, right? I mean, we're on a brewery podcast.
Yes.
And we're talking
Yeah.
about Irish guys.
Yeah.
So,
No, that happened so long ago. Let's just go with it, whether it's true or not.
That's the
write,
story.
and,
We're sticking
let's
to
write
it.
that in history.
yeah, I mean, that's the legend that I
I
like.
heard
to
it on
believe.
a podcast.
I like it
It has
too.
to be
Exactly.
true.
We heard it on a
Yes.
podcast. So, So it's a cool industry, and like I said, we're just here to try to help breweries to be successful. And the last reason that we do breweries, right, is because for us, selfishly, if I go to the office building down the street and I'm trying to sell them on a new service contract, and I say, oh, I do the other office building down the street, right? It's another 20-story building.
Yeah.
They're not gonna know. They're gonna, oh, okay, cool. But if I go, hey, I do Space Cadet.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we were there last week for happy hour. Like, everybody knows the brewery, so it's name recognition.
Yeah, exactly.
So while no one knows any other water treatment companies, everybody knows breweries.
That's what the brewing is. It's just the cool manufacturing.
Exactly. You guys bring a household name to our industry, and it genuinely helps us because no one knows what we do.
Yeah.
But if I tell my friends and family, oh, we do a bunch of breweries, oh, they do something at breweries. Like, they can at least associate. They know what that is. And that's kind of a lot of the reason why we have found this space to be very attractive, because it's relatable. Our dad wants to hear about the cool places that we go to, specifically the breweries and the distilleries. Matt actually took our dad one day.
Took him on a road trip. And,
go
best
check
day
out.
of the month. It was Taconic Distillery. It was Industrial Arts Brewery and Sloop Brewery. And
Nice.
I did my work and did my testing, and he got to walk
He had a
around the
great
brewery
day.
and the distillery. He got to pull the bung out of a fresh open barrel at the distillery and be the first one to taste it. And
Nice.
it's very cool. Very cool.
So it's a relatable space for an unrelatable industry. And that's kind of why we have found a little bit more of a passion for this. Going to your average grammar school that has a steam boiler, it's not glorious. But going to a really cool brewery, and
It's a little bit different.
it's a little bit different. Sometimes, even we get to drink a beer while we do our testing.
Yeah.
And it's just,
Sometimes they give you free beer.
that's not drinking at work, that's sampling the product.
Exactly.
Right?
Quality assurance.
Quality assurance.
Making sure our treatment works.
And it's cool because, like, they're also customers that like to hang out and talk, and we don't get that a lot. We work in we're a mix of a blue and white collar environment, so we're in a boiler room, and yet we turn a wrench and we carry a toolbox, but it's full of little test bottles. We have a mobile test kit, right? And I got a tool backpack, but it's got a laptop and more test equipment. The most tools that we carry is like a pair of channel locks and a screwdriver.
Yeah.
But then we're also writing technical papers, and then we're meeting with the owners, and we're doing, so we are doing chemistry in a blue collar world. So it's a cool field. I wish that more young people got into it, because it is really interesting. It is kind of different.
I think they will. I think
Every young person that we've brought around with us that has a head on their shoulders sees that it's a really cool job.
It's tangible, like you said.
It's tangible, and it's not. You're not sitting behind a cubicle you're not sitting behind a desk every day. Granted, you spend a lot of time behind your windshield, but you get to go somewhere different every single day.
Yeah. Keep it fresh.
Yeah, like tomorrow I'm going to be in 2 different states. I'm going to go to 4 different buildings, and every single one of them is different. One's a corporate headquarters for a credit card company. I got to go to a bakery tomorrow. Then I'm going to the world headquarters for Party City, and then I'm going to the corporate headquarters for a senior healthcare facility. So it's kind of like all over the place every day. Different people, different walks of life, and that's what we do, and that's how we ended up here.
Nice. I think that is our time, though. So, I mean, what can you guys say about Wasak? Is there something to look out for? I mean, it's a little bit different than, like, breweries that we have on, like, but I guess where can we find you guys? If there's brewers that are listening to you, who should they reach out to?
Yeah, we have a website, wasakwater.com.
Okay.
We're in the process of acquiring wasak.com.
Nice.
And yeah, reach out to us. We have an Inquire Here page. We also have a LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel that Matt stars on for some YouTube shorts.
Yeah, we have
like 6
6
videos.
videos.
On YouTube.
I
Nice.
got to get back on that.
Yeah,
been busy.
And we're also in the process of coming out with a product line specifically for beer
Nice.
for breweries. It's called the Wasak. What's it called?
It's called
The
Boiler
Wasak method?
Beer.
Boiler beer.
That was
And
spelt
we have
the
a-
German
we have-
way.
Yeah, and we have like a logo and the whole 9 yards, and it's the same product. We're just going to rebrand it for beers.
Nice. But I think if you are a brewery and you're listening to this, and you have not thought of, even if you're not looking for a water treatment program or you haven't thought about this, that means that you should be. So it means that if you don't know what we're talking about, it means that you should reach out to Wasak and you should figure this out.
That's
Yeah,
the
and,
overarching message.
And we provide free consulting services to anybody that wants us to come out. We'll take a look. There's no charge for us to come out for initial consultation, do a workup on your boiler. We do exchange. We do ask for like some tastings, some samples.
Yeah.
But
Hey, the brewers are also looking for excuses to stop and drink a beer with somebody too. So
Exactly.
everybody wins.
but like I said, we are. Our main mission is to help customers. That's always been our main mission, and whether that's mechanically, chemically, financially, emotionally, we've been there for some people. We're just there to help our customers because we have found that you help the customer first and you worry about the money second. The money always ends up coming.
Well,
So-
they'll have the money once they start working for you. So
Exactly.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much for your time, Richie. We appreciate being on this podcast. It's our first time being on a podcast. We listen to a lot of them.
Yeah. We are podcast addicts.
Well, good luck when you listen to this one because it's very weird to listen to your own voice. But
I won't be listening to it.
Yeah, my sons can't wait. They just cannot understand how I'm going to be in a podcast.
Yeah.
They're not sure how that happens. It's kind of like Willy Wonka with the kid
Yeah.
floating through space. But we're very excited to be part of this, and thank you very much.
Cool. Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
again for coming on, and you can follow us at Brewdat or at the Brewdat Podcast, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.